Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome to the first Downtown Revitalization Initiative Local Planning Committee meeting for the Village of Ossining. I'm Susan Lanfried, Revitalization Specialist with the New York State Department of State Office of Planning, Development, and Community Infrastructure, and the Project Manager for the Ossining DRI. We are excited to be here with you today as we kick off the exciting DRI process. Joining us this afternoon, we do have Deputy Secretary of State, Keisha Santiago Martinez. Keisha, good afternoon, if you'd like to make a couple of comments.
Hi, sorry, I was just trying to get on mute. Yes, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. We are so excited for the Village of Ossining. What a great opportunity. And we absolutely know that Ossining is just gonna knock this one right out of the park. The application itself was incredibly thoughtful and strong. You've identified so many great anchors to help really lead this effort forward. And again, we are just excited. I know that the Secretary of State was not able to join today, but I think that we can just say on behalf of the Secretary and the entire Department of State and the overall team that the waterfront access, the community stronghold, the focus on mixed use and taking advantage of all those beautiful natural assets, as well as building on a former brownfield. This is all just going to be a great impact to the Village of Ossining. And, we look at all of these DRI communities and their success as part of New York State's success in recovering and rebuilding. So again, you have the full team here. We're excited to work with you. This is just the beginning, and I'm definitely looking forward to, as is the Secretary, having an opportunity to go to the Village of Ossining as this is all unfolding. So congratulations on being a DRI Round 5 winner, and great luck to you all, but know that the Department of State is here ready to work with you the entire way through. Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha. And as Keisha said, we do have a special message from Secretary of State Robert Rodriguez to help us kick off this process.
Congratulations on your successful DRI award. Before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge your local leadership for your efforts. It's such a pleasure to join you at the start of this transformative journey that we call DRI. I also want to thank my colleagues in government who have been actively engaged in supporting your application. I'm also grateful to Governor Hochul, who has given me the opportunity to serve as Secretary of State and to lead the work that we do in community development through the DRI. Before joining as Secretary of State, I was a legislator. But before that, I served on my local community board and worked on community development initiatives in East Harlem and New York City. So I know firsthand that the best things come as a result of local planning and building consensus and partnership amongst local actors within the community. That is what creates lasting change. So I don't just talk about it, I believe it, and I believe that what we're doing here is incredible and transformative. Upstate communities like yours have experienced the roller coaster ride of development. Unfortunately, we've seen the peaks and the valleys, periods of economic growth, followed by long periods of decline and disinvestment. Deindustrialization has hit New York State communities particularly hard. But even with the odds sometimes stacked against you, you persevered. And now we have the chance to come back and accelerate a new era of rebirth with DRI. And as the cornerstone of the state's economic development programs, the DRI works because it isn't about the state telling you what community development is and what economic development looks like for your community. No, it's the opposite. It's about building upon the groundwork of your community-driven plans, bringing local stakeholders together to identify key projects and investment that will accelerate the revitalization of the downtown area and create a higher quality of life for the residents. And the success of your community is such a critical part of the state's overall successful economic recovery. That's why the DRI brings New Yorkers back to the downtown, transforming neighborhoods like yours into vibrant centers, which will serve as magnets for businesses, job creation, and economic and housing diversity. The DRI is a collaborative program, both on the state and local agency level. And that's why it's so important, because downtown revitalization is complex. It requires different levels of government and the community to be involved in order to make it successful. And we have an incredible team here that will be working alongside you, starting with the Department of State revitalization specialists, but also bringing our sister agency partners at HCR and ESD and your consultant team to bear to the table to help you work through the issues, all of whom are ready to hit the ground running. And again, it's not about us, it's about you, the LPC members. You play the most critical role in the DRI planning and implementation process. You're the leaders in your community and will tell us which projects you think have the most merit, meaning, and value to your vision of the downtown. These are the projects that will eventually form the strategic investment plan. And that's why this leadership position with it brings a duty and an obligation to listen and hear what your community has to say. The consultants will talk more about that, but that's really the formula. That's our special sauce. That's what makes us better and our process unique. Bringing in those diverse voices, building consensus by reaching out to the residents and stakeholders so that they can be effectively brought into this process and truly have a seat at the DRI table. So throughout this process, keep in mind that the projects that you choose should reinforce and synergize one another so that collectively you can attract future investment. And while each individual project is important, this $10 million award is focused on the end goal, which is your community's vision being realized. So thank you in advance for the numerous meetings, efforts, and time and energy that you'll be spending on this effort. But we are grateful for your efforts and are committed to make sure that this process is a success and that ultimately your community transforms. Thank you.
A great message to get us started in this exciting planning process. I'd like to go ahead and introduce the two co-chairs of the LPC. We'll start with the Village of Ossining Mayor, Erika Boch.
Hello, everyone. So happy to be here. And so happy that I'm not wearing a mask, so I get to smile. You get to see that I'm happy. Love the logo, by the way. Great job on that. I'm going to make this really short and sweet without being redundant, because I'm sure there will be more to come today. First of all, gratitude for everyone making time today to be here with us. Especially the folks who are taking time from their jobs and other things that are going on in their life. I am thrilled that Austin's been chosen. I've said that before. What I'm also thrilled about is that this speaks to our strength. I have always believed that teams produce far greater results than any single individual. And this is absolutely going to be a team effort, a team gathered here today. More teams that we bring on, stakeholders that we communicate with before, during, and after these meetings. And I think that Austin has a reputation for being productive. We just needed a chance to prove ourselves. And we now have that chance. And I am really thrilled to work with my co-chair, who has just tremendous experience to contribute, a village manager who has worked in our downtown. And obviously lives in our community, but also worked in downtown with so many of our members of such a diverse community that we live in, and a community that has grown so much. And so I look forward to listening, hearing, digesting, and producing great results with the help of this really outstanding team. I again thank the state for really being at the forefront of the support, and expect to get lots more support to make us successful. So I thank everyone for being here, looking for great results. Everyone knows how to reach me. I am always available for conversation, and I'm going to turn this over, I think, to my co-chair, if I'm not mistaken.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Levin. I'm totally looking forward to working with you and Karen and the entire team. I'm Marsha Gordon. I'm the president and CEO of the Business Council of Westchester. We are Westchester's County's business advocacy and business development and economic development organization. We have over 1,000 businesses. And while I don't live in Ossining, I love Ossining, and I love the river, and I love the communities. And I'm also very fortunate to be co-chair of the Regional Economic Development Council, which is why I'm co-chairing this initiative with the mayor. So I'm really here to listen and to support, and when appropriate, guide. This is my third DRI project. I was co-chaired in New Rochelle and in Peekskill. And I have to say, I am the most excited about this because you are a community that works together, that has such exciting possibilities. And let's get to it. Very, very excited. And VHB, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Marcia. And now I'll turn it over to Catherine from VHB, who will walk us through the agenda before we continue the rest of the introductions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. And thank you to everyone who has welcomed us here this afternoon. So here is our agenda for today. It is a long agenda. I'll acknowledge at the start, we've got 2 hours together. And we're looking forward to discussing an overview of the DRI program, as well as the Village of Ossining's DRI application, and importantly, looking ahead, the public engagement plan for the DRI planning process in Ossining. So we have these 3 sort of sections to our agenda: DRI overview, where we'll talk about the planning process, roles and responsibilities, as well as project types and criteria. Then we'll take a break for Q&A. We'll then move into the Village of Ossining's DRI application. We'll talk together about the DRI boundary. We'll review the draft vision and goals. That's where we'll have the interactive portion of the meeting where we'll bring up a word cloud activity as well as some polling. And then we'll talk about the DRI application projects. We'll pause again for Q&A, and then we'll move into the last portion of the meeting where we discuss public engagement. We'll review agendas for upcoming LPC meetings as well as public meetings, our outreach strategies that we'll employ, and a call for projects. Let's go ahead and flip to the next slide. As was mentioned earlier, this is a meeting where members of the public can share comment. There are a few ways to ask a question or share a comment. If you're in the Zoom meeting, you can use the raise hand icon. If you're using a telephone to call in, you can use *9. There's also a question and answer box. If you submit a question or raise hand during the presentation, we will see it, but we will not address them until the public comment period that will start at 1:45. The chat function will be disabled during the meeting to reduce distraction. And I should flag, you may have heard at the start of the meeting, that it will be recorded and posted to the Village's YouTube page. So with that, we'll move into introductions of the different teams who will be working together on this DRI planning process. The first team is the LPC, the Local Planning Committee. There are 17 members of the Village of Ossining LPC. We've heard from the 2 co-chairs, Mayor Erika Levin and Dr. Marcia Gordon. We would like to ask each member of the LPC to briefly say hello and introduce yourself. I will go ahead and move down the list, going in alphabetical order, for lack of a better strategy. So if you hear me call your name, please say hello and introduce yourself. So first up is Bill Balter.
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Hi, I'm Bill Balter from Wilder Balter Partners. We're very excited to be a part of this group. I was on the LPC in Peekskill a couple of years ago, It was a great process, and I'm really looking forward to doing a better process here. We're doing development at the old DPW site in a public-private partnership with the village, and we look forward to working on other things with the village. And all of you, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Bill. Next up, we have Erika Boch. I apologize for having botched your name. Oh, Erika, you're on mute.
It's Boch. It's Boch.
Boch.
Sorry.
Got it. Thank you.
My name's Erika Boch. I have lived in the village of Ossining since 2007. For the past 3 or 4 years, I have been the chair of the Village Environmental Advisory Council. In addition to running an arts business with my husband, I also work as a landscape restoration specialist for New York City Environmental Protection.
Great. Thank you so much, Erika. Next up is Thomas Carey.
Hi, everybody. I'm Thomas Carey. I'm the president of the Westchester Putnam Central Labor Body. I'm sorry, I'm walking.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. It seems you
MHRDC.
cut out a bit.
I'm sorry. I've been with the MHRDC since
Oh, sorry about that, Tom. You cut out again.
a Verplank resident my entire life, so my fade now.
Yes, that's all right.
Am I
We'll
back?
move ahead, but please feel free to chime in toward the end of the introductions. Okay, next up I have Marlene Cheatham.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Marlene Cheatham and currently serve as the chairperson of the board for the Interfaith Council for Action, but I also chair the zoning board for the Village of Ossining. I, above all, am a lifelong Ossining resident, so to see development happen in the Village of Ossining is exciting and exhilarating, and I can see in my head that this committee will be able to move us forward to the place that we have always envisioned it to be.
That's great. Thank you, Marlene. Next up is Peter Chernoff.
Hi, I'm Peter Chernoff. I am an Ossining homeowner and developer, completely focused in the village center. So I'm excited to be part of this and bring about a great result, I hope.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Next up is Lindsey Farrel.
Hi, I'm the CEO of Open Door. I've worked here for 40 years. I've lived in Ossining for 40 years. Open Door has 2 properties on Main Street, our health center at 165, and we purchased the building at 2 Church, which we are going to be refurbishing completely into a brand new state-of-the-art medical center. We're really excited about the Open Door of the future, and I'm Karen DeTore's biggest fan, and I'm delighted to be here.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. Next up is Brent Glass.
Good afternoon. I'm Brent Glass, Executive Director of the Sing Sing Prison Museum. And I was going to say I was Karen DeTore's biggest fan, and Lindsay took my line away. But I'm delighted to be part of this process, delighted to have contributed to the application, the successful application for the village DRI process. And while I am wearing the hat of executive director for the Prison Museum, and we're eager to learn more about how the museum can contribute to the transformative goals of the project, I also have federal and state experience that I think I can bring to bear as part of the committee. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Brent. Next up is Kim Jacobs.
Hi, all. I'm thrilled to be here today. I'm a 35-year Ossining resident. I am the former president and CEO of Community Capital New York, which was a not-for-profit organization that provides financing for community development initiatives. I'm a former member of the Regional Economic Development Council, and am thrilled that in one of my last acts before retiring last year, I was able to cast my vote to ensure that, help ensure that Ossining was a recipient of this award, because I think we have great promise and great things we can do here.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Next up is Adam Markovitz.
Catherine, I
Yes.
believe Adam was one of the people who could not make it today.
Oh, I'm sorry, you are correct. Okay, great. We will move on. Is Elizabeth Martinez on the line? I don't think that she is.
Yeah, I don't see the name in our list.
Okay, so we'll move on to Seth Roy.
Hey everybody, I'm Seth Roy. I am an architect by training. I've been in Ossining for the last 10 years. And I'm currently serving as the chair of the Ossining Planning Board. Very excited to be part of this group and get to meet you all.
Great, thank you, Seth. Next up is Joyce Sharrick Kroll.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joyce Sharrick Kroll. I serve as the Ossining Village Historian. I sit on the HPC. I've been a 25-year employee of Westchester County. My first job was at the Ossining Recreation. Then I worked for Lindsey Farrel at the Ossining Open Door and still on the book. So I'm so very Ossining that I'm excited to see the possibilities of what we can be when we're at our best. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Okay, next up is Jeff Shumacher. Oh, thank you, Karen. I see that you're about to.
Jeff is also going to, we'll be speaking to him later.
That's right. Okay, we'll have two more LPC members, Mariana Silva.
Hello, everybody. My name is Melita. I'm a resident of Ossining for over 30 years. Totally in love with the village of Ossining. I'm an owner of Melita's Home boutique downtown Ossining, and also an owner of a few buildings. I can say I'm a pioneer of restoring some of the old buildings downtown. I've been seeing all that has been changing in Ossining, and I'm totally excited about what's going on. And I am trying to be the voice of all the residents downtown Ossining and homeowners and shop owners. I want to be the voice for downtown. I'm very excited, and thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Melita. Dana White, would you like to say hello?
Hi, my name is Dana White. I'm a Ossining Village trustee. Before that, I was the village historian for about 5.5 years. I have to admit, this is a little surreal because we've worked hard. A lot of people have worked hard to get to this point. And I think as someone who has seen the ups and downs of the past, well, I would say 50 to 75 years, you know, that we have a chance to do something that is truly historic and to be extremely inclusive in the process. So I'm super excited to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thomas Carey, I think you had said that, yes, you're back online. Would you like to say hello before we move on?
Yes, my apologies.
Okay.
So again, I'm Thomas Carey. I'm the president of the Westchester Putnam Central Labor Body. Very much like Marcia Gordon, I was involved in the New Rochelle, the Peekskill, and now Ossining DRI. So I'm very excited. I've been with the MHREDC since 2017. I'm a 55-year plus, that's all I'm going to say, Verplank resident. So I'm just north of you guys. I love Ossining. I love all your great pizza shops, your restaurants. So I'm very excited to work with Ossining on your DRI project. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Thomas. All right, so that is our local planning committee for the Village of Ossining. It was such a pleasure to meet each of you. Moving on, we have a number of folks on the line from the New York State Department of State, as well as other partner agencies. We'd like to give them the opportunity to briefly say hello as well. Susan, I know you've already spoken, but I'll turn it over to you for a moment.
Thanks, Catherine. So again, I'm Susan Landry, the Department of State Project Manager for the Ossining DRI. I'll be working with the Village of Ossining and the consultant team to help guide this DRI process and serve as a resource to you all, the LPC and the village throughout the process. So I'd like to introduce our state team who will also be acting to support you throughout the planning process. When I say your name, if you all could say a quick hello and do a quick introduction, that would be great. And we'll start with Keisha again.
Everyone, Keisha Santiago Martinez. I'm the Deputy Secretary of State of the Office of Planning, Development, and Community Infrastructure, of which the DRI is a part, as well as LWRP, BOA, and our coastal consistency programs.
And then Sarah Kroll.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Kroll, Director of the Office of Planning, Development, and Community Infrastructure. Keisha just described our portfolio. I'm excited to see what happens in Ossining. Looking forward to this DRI. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. And we've got Dave Ashton.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Ashton from the Department of State. I'm the statewide DRI Program Director. Just want to say this LPC seems fantastic. What a great group, so much enthusiasm. All the LPCs around the state are great, but this one seems to be particularly well tuned to take on this process. So congratulations to the village. We look forward to joining you for all kinds of exciting groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings in the near future. So good luck with the process, and we're all here to support your efforts.
Great, thank you. And then we've got Josh Hun from the Department of State.
Hi, I'm Josh Hun. Apologies, I don't have video today. I'm getting a new laptop today, so but I'm a coastal resources specialist with the Department of State and happy to support this DRI.
And then we've also got some members from Empire State Development, and so we'll start with Tom Skaglian.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thomas Skaglian. I'm the Regional Director for ESD here in the Mid-Hudson region. We oversee the MHREDC as well as the DRI selection process. And again, so congratulations to the Village of Ossining. I'm also joined by my colleague, Eric Warren, our Senior Project Manager, who oversees Westchester County as well as Rockland County. So I'll turn it over to him to introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Eric Warren, like Tom says, Senior Project Manager, cover Westchester, Rockland, and also Putnam for the Mid-Hudson region. And I'm glad to be here to see this DRI project for the Village of Ossining through. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas and Eric. And then we are joined by a representative from Homes and Community Renewal, Patricia OReilly.
Hello, everyone. I'm Patricia OReilly. I am a program director at New York State Homes and Community Renewal. I manage their New York Main Street program, as well as any DRI contracts that come our way as part of this process. So I'm looking forward to working with you guys.
Thanks, Patricia. And while we do not have a representative from NYSERDA today, they were not able to join us. We will have support and expertise from NYSERDA throughout this process, so expect to see them in future meetings. And that's it for me. So back to you, Catherine.
Okay, thank you, Susan. All right, the next team of folks who we would like to introduce are from the Village of Ossining. You've heard from Mayor Erika Levin. Karen, could I give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and say a bit about the members of the village team who will be working on the DRI?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is really very, very exciting and the culmination of many years of hard work to get here. Not only have I had the great honor of working with many of you over the years in various capacities and all in united support for the Village of Ossining and the residents of Ossining. I also have to acknowledge the tremendous effort that has gone into this from our staff here at the village. So I'd like to acknowledge Maddie Zahach, our Deputy Village Manager, Jaime Martinez, our Director of Planning, Jamie Hoffman, our Communications Director, and Valerie Menostra, who spent many years as a planner for the village and is now working with us specifically on the DRI, helping us through this process. Their contributions to the application were tremendous, and they are digging in hard here to make sure we have the support that we need to have a very successful planning process and end up with a strategic investment plan that really maximizes the impact of DRI funding and positions Ossining as a model community, not just for our region, but for our nation, because we know that we all believe that's what we are. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. We're really excited to be working with you and your team. Okay, the last group of folks who we will introduce are the consultant team. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Catherine Zanell. I'm a project manager at VHB, which is a planning and engineering firm. We are the primary consultant who has been contracted by New York State to support the LPC and the Village of Ossining in developing the DRI planning process and ultimately the strategic investment plan. I am joined today by my colleague, Christy Kaselak. So I'll turn it over to her to introduce herself and the rest of the consultant team.
Thank you, Catherine. As Catherine mentioned, my name is Christiana Kaselak. I am an environmental planner at VHB, and I'll be working alongside Catherine with this process. And as Catherine mentioned, we will be working with a group of consultants, including Carp Strategies. And with that, we actually have Yuri Chang, a member of the team, here with us today. And if Yuri would like to say hello and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure, thank you. Hi, my name is Yuri Chang. I am a consultant at Carp Strategies. We're a small urban planning firm based in New York, a women-owned enterprise, and we're very excited to be able to work on the DRI. And we're here to support Ossining in facilitating an inclusive engagement process as Ossining goes through the DRI process. So excited to work with you all.
Thank you, Yuri. In addition to Carp Strategies, we'll be also working with Kevin Dorka, who is a land use and economic consultant specializing in revitalization. And he is definitely familiar with the Village of Ossining as he has worked with the village previously. WXY, they are an architectural firm with expertise in design and conceptual layouts. Trophy Point, they are a service disabled veteran-owned business. They're known for their construction and consulting service, of which they will be providing us with construction cost estimates for the priority projects that are going to be identified later on in the process. And lastly, Sharp Lens, also a veteran-owned business, and they're going to be providing us with photos and video documentation as needed throughout this process to enhance our deliverables and to make this to include like the best photographs that we could possibly can in that final report that we're going to talk about later on. And with that, I'm actually going to hand it over to Susan from DOS to talk about our DRI Code of Conduct.
Thanks, Christy. So I'm going to provide an overview of the Code of Conduct for the DRI. I believe each of you all received this via email, and some of you have already returned it to me. Next slide, please. So because you all will be guiding the planning approach and identifying revitalization projects that can influence both public and private spending, it is essential that you as LPC members are always serving and acting in the public interest, regardless of affiliation with or relationship to any business, municipality, not-for-profit, agency, program, entity, or interest group. The Code of Conduct ensures a high level of transparency and addresses potential conflicts of interest between LPC members and the interests that do not serve the public. All LPC members should read and sign the Code of Conduct and fill out a recusal form as needed throughout the planning process. The Code of Conduct is due before our second LPC meeting in March, and I will be collecting the signed codes of conduct and recusal forms, and I'll discuss logistics on how to get to those later. Next slide, please. So as a member of the LPC, you should endeavor to pursue a course of conduct that will not raise even the appearance of impropriety or improper conduct while serving. The Code of Conduct should always be used as your guide in any conversations about the DRI. As a good reminder of the Code of Conduct standards, you can use the acronym DAD: disclose conflicts of interest, act in the public interest, and disqualify if necessary. So in the Code of Conduct, a conflict of interest may occur when the personal interests, financial or otherwise, of a member has the potential to interfere or appear to interfere with a committee member's independent advice. As noted, each member is expected to exercise their LPC duties or responsibilities, acting in the public interest and in such a manner where any benefit to the member or a family member relative is incidental only. If a benefit is more than incidental to the LPC member, the family member, or a relative, then a conflict of interest arises. So in that case, if there is a potential for, oh, next slide, please. In that case, if there is a potential or perceived conflict of interest, it must be disclosed at the earliest possible time, at a minimum prior to the meeting at which the matter will be discussed. At future LPC meetings, there will be a preamble read at the beginning of each meeting, and there will be an opportunity to share any recusals at that time. Agendas and meeting materials will be sent to you all in advance of the meeting, so please review those to determine if there is a potential conflict of interest. If you are uncertain about a potential conflict, please request an opinion from the Department of State's Ethics Council, whose information will be provided to you at the end of this section of the presentation. Next slide, please. Once a conflict of interest has been identified, that member cannot vote or attempt to influence any discussion or vote, which can be achieved by removing yourself from the discussion or leaving the room. However, that member may provide factual information in a public forum about the project as long as there is no attempt to influence the decision. Next slide, thank you. As noted, members must identify that potential conflict at the first meeting in which the matter related to the conflict is being discussed. So I'll be maintaining that list of recusals and recusal forms for each project during the duration of this planning process, and we'll update that list at each meeting. At the beginning of each meeting, the LPC co-chairs will be reminding everyone of their obligation to recuse. When acting in the public interest, no member should use their position as an LPC member to get any unwarranted privileges or exemptions for themselves as others. It is possible that members will receive confidential information during this process as part of evaluating projects, and members should not disclose any of that confidential information or use that information to further their personal interests. And then, as we are all aware, the spread of COVID-19 is still of concern, so committee members must agree to abide by all on-site, local, state, and federal protocols to reduce the risk of spread and protect the health and safety of everyone involved in this process. And then if you are uncertain or have questions about this code of conduct, a potential conflict of interest, or the perception of one, you can reach out directly to our DOS, Department of State Ethics Counsel, Linda Baldwin, whose information is on this page. As I said, I will be collecting the signed codes of conducts. The best way to get those to me is to sign, scan, and email them. And my email address will be provided at the end of the presentation. But I will be working with you all prior to the next LPC meeting to make sure to collect all of those. So thank you all very much for your attention to this perhaps less exciting, but very important part of the presentation and this process for now. And I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Catherine, and we'll dive right into the DRI process.
Okay, thank you so much, Susan. And again, thank you to the folks who have already shared, signed code of conduct forms. If you have any questions, you can contact Susan, whose information will be provided at the end of the meeting. And if you have specific questions about circumstances, please reach out to the Ethics Council. All right, so we have covered welcome and introductions, as well as code of conduct, and now we're going to share an overview of the DRI program. In its 5th year, the DRI program specifically supports the revitalization of downtowns and their businesses, infrastructure, and other critical community assets. I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but we know that downtown revitalization offers many benefits, including reducing the impacts of climate change and spurring economic recovery following COVID-19. The Village of Ossining was selected, among others, to receive $10 million in DRI funding because it has the potential to become a magnet for redevelopment, business and job creation, and greater housing diversity and opportunity. So looking here at the next slide, you can see the key ingredients for a successful DRI. And we're going to discuss each of these in more detail over the course of today's meeting. The first ingredient, so to speak, is a clear vision for downtown. The second are goals and strategies to accomplish that vision. The third ingredient is a strategic investment plan with catalytic projects. That is the primary deliverable of this DRI planning process. We will also have a clear timeline for those projects that have been identified, as well as related initiatives and actions to be taken. A very important part of the DRI planning process is robust public engagement, as well as supportive local policies and planning. So if we shift to the next slide, we've got a timeline. And this timeline shows the different components of the DRI planning process. The New York State Department of State has laid out a 6-month process to develop a strategic investment plan for downtown revitalization. The first step is establishing a local planning committee. So, hooray, we've done that. This local planning committee will meet 6 times over the course of the DRI planning process. You can see our first meeting taking place here in February, and then we've spaced out the remaining meetings approximately 3 to 4 weeks apart between now and late June. There will also be 3 public meetings that take place as part of the DRI planning process, where we will be soliciting community input. The first meeting is scheduled to take place in early March, and we are anticipating a second would take place in mid-April and a third in early June. Looking at deliverables, we will produce a vision as well as goals and strategies for downtown Ossining. That work will begin in earnest today at the first LPC meeting. We will seek community input at the first public meeting, and we will then confirm that we've gotten it right at our next LPC meeting. We will also develop a public engagement plan. We will begin discussing the public engagement plan today. We will specifically seek your input on outreach strategies that have been effective. And we will share a version of that document that incorporates feedback following this meeting. Another early stage deliverable is the downtown profile and assessment, which tells the story of the DRI area and provides the basis for projects that will be recommended for DRI funding. So we've also begun work on that and expect to present it at the second LPC meeting for your input. Then looking to the second half of the DRI planning process, we will develop project profiles. These profiles will include important information on potential projects that could receive DRI funding. Once we have compiled this information together, we will have the draft strategic investment plan. So the draft strategic investment plan includes all of the prior deliverables, plus information on any related initiatives or actions that would be taken to implement the vision developed for the Village of Ossining. We will have a draft strategic investment plan by early June for discussion at the third public meeting. And then the LPC at its final meeting in June will vote on a slate of potential projects. They will go into the final strategic investment plan and be submitted to the multi-agency state DRI programming for review and approval. All right, so now that we have shared an overview of the DRI program and the DRI planning process, we will share information about the roles and responsibilities of each of the different teams that are part of the process. So I will turn it over to Christy, who will walk through the roles and responsibilities.
Sorry, I was on mute. You would think I'd be used to it by now. So thank you, Catherine. So to start off, we'll talk about the roles and responsibilities for the consultant team. First off, the roles of the consultant team consist of preparing for and staffing the LPC meetings as we are doing today, preparing for and leading the public meetings. As Catherine said, the first public meeting will be held in early March. Conduct research and studies, prepare program documents with input from the LPC as well as the state team, prepare project profiles and analyses that demonstrate feasibility and impact of projects, and guide the planning process as well. So we will be your right-hand man working with you throughout this entire process. Then let's talk about the roles of the LPC. So the roles for the LPC includes brainstorming ideas, providing feedback, refining the vision for the Village of Ossining's downtown that we're going to talk about today, develop the goals and strategies to achieve that vision, develop a downtown profile and assessment. As Catherine mentioned, we're starting on working on that now, and we'll share with you all once that is finalized. Develop a public engagement plan and engage the public in the planning process. Identify and select priority projects for the downtown revitalization. Recommend projects to be included in the strategic investment plan, as Catherine said, that final deliverable at the end of this process. And work with the consultant team and the state team to prepare and submit that DRI strategic investment plan to the state. And that ultimately will conclude the process. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Susan from the state to talk through the state roles and responsibilities.
Thanks, Christy. So the state team, which is led by the Department of State, will support the consultant in these LPC meetings and deliberations throughout the process. So each state partner covers an area that will be essential to the development of the strategic investment plan. So us at Department of State will provide planning in areas of smart growth, brownfield redevelopment, coastal resources, and just using our experience from leading 4 rounds of previous DRI initiatives. Homes and Community Renewal, or HCR, will help provide information about urban housing and urban development, redevelopment, community development block grants, and various state and federal housing programs. Empire State Development, or ESD, will provide knowledge about regional planning and development in and around the downtown and innovative ways to support the private sector and nonprofit development. And then NYSERDA for us is a new partner for the DRI program this year, and they will really support this planning process with energy efficiency and decarbonization strategies and activities, both community-wide, but also in specific sites and individual building upgrades. And this is particularly important this year, given that new and substantial rehabilitation construction projects must align with the Stretch Energy Code. And then as Catherine and Christy referred to, after the planning process is complete, these state partners will be involved in reviewing and evaluating the projects included in that strategic investment plan and in making the final funding decisions and then making funding available for implementation.
Great, thank you, Susan. And lastly, but not least, the Village of Ossining, they're going to be also having a large role and responsibility in part of this process as well. And with that, the co-chair will provide leadership for the LPC, which is the mayor, provide local assistance to the consultants and the state planning team, support the DRI process by identifying key resources, information, and stakeholders, assist with meeting logistics, and they're going to act as a local point of contact for public engagement. Now that we talked about the roles and responsibilities, let's now talk about the types of projects that are eligible and not eligible for this project. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Catherine.
Thank you, Christy. Okay, this is the last chunk of information for this DRI overview section of the meeting. So as was shared, the $10 million award that was made to the Village of Ossining will be used to fund catalytic projects that spur or continue downtown revitalization. So we thought it would be helpful right at the start to talk about the types of projects that are eligible for DRI funding and the types of projects that are not eligible for DRI funding. You can see here that public improvements are eligible, as is new development and rehabilitation of existing structures, revolving loan and grant funds, and branding and marketing campaigns. Not eligible for DRI funding are planning activities, operation and maintenance, pre-award costs, property acquisition, training, or expenses related to existing programs. So this is information that we will be delving into more deeply as we identify potential projects and develop project profiles. But just, in terms of basic overview, these are the general types of projects that are eligible for DRI funding. If we look to the next slide, projects that are eligible for DRI funding must also meet particular criteria. One very important criteria is that the project must be ready to break ground within 2 years. And we realize that for many projects that is an aggressive timeline. And so the DRI funding is indeed for projects that are ready to go or nearly ready to go. In terms of project size and scale, projects must be at least $100,000 in cost, and residential projects must have at least 8 units and an affordable component. For projects that are public and nonprofit, DRI funding can be used for 100% of project costs. However, leveraging non-DRI funding makes the project more competitive. As the projects are submitted to the state for review and evaluation, we see that projects that leverage non-DRI funding are more competitive for being approved and funded. For private projects, DRI funding covers up to 40% of project costs. Also important is that private projects commit to higher energy standards. They would be eligible for up to 50% of project costs in that case. And new and substantial rehabilitation must meet the stretch energy code. So that is our brief overview of the DRI program. So we're going to take our first pause here. We've been together for almost an hour. And so I want to give folks who may have questions about the DRI program, generally speaking, the opportunity to ask them. And then we will shift into a discussion of the DRI application for the Village of Ossining. So if any LPC members have general questions at this time, you can go ahead and unmute and ask them, or you could also feel free to put them in the chat and we'll take a look at the chat. I realize it's a lot of information, so folks may not have questions in this moment, but may after reflecting and reviewing the information. We'll give folks another moment to see if there's a question that they would like to ask.
I have a question. Just very quickly, I know that this is being recorded. Will it be available to all members after the meeting, and will you send us a link so that we can watch it? Because it's a lot of information to grasp in a short amount of time.
Yes, absolutely. We will be making this meeting recording available both to LPC members and the public on the Village's YouTube page, and we will also be sharing the PowerPoint presentation.
In addition, Catherine, just one thing worth adding is that we have contact info later on in the slide deck. We'll be sharing that in the chat as well. So if you do think of a question later on, and maybe perhaps not in the moment, there are certainly ways you can share that information.
Marlene, we can also push out the link to all the members here just so they have it for the YouTube page.
Oh, Marlene, I think you're speaking but are on mute.
Oh, I was just saying thank you, Karen.
Cool. All right. Does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask about the DRI process? Okay, hearing none, we will forge ahead. So the next section of the presentation is specific to the Village of Ossining's winning DRI application. We will be discussing the DRI boundary that was identified in the application. We will discuss the vision statement and ask for your feedback. We will also ask for your input on potential goals to help accomplish the vision statement. And then we will review briefly the DRI application projects that were identified by the village as potential funding candidates. So let's go to the next slide. And here I will ask the mayor and Karen to speak briefly about the DRI boundary and how it was drawn.
First, I have to unmute. Hello, everybody again. So far, just learning an amazing amount. I hope everyone else is as well. From the top line point of view, as Trustee White had said, there was a lot of work that went into it. And one of the pieces was to choose a dozen or so initiatives that we have heard about for the past no less than 5 years, because we have been involved with stakeholder meetings on topics from housing to downtown development, Sing Sing Museum, and all sorts throughout Ossining, the downtown especially. And EAC has a lot of input about what they'd like to see. And these are the initiatives that we looked at, and the boundaries really were set for us to really focus on the development of downtown. Thus the name of the initiative when we put this together. I think that they're pretty self-explanatory, and I know we have a lot to cover in this meeting, but they do cover everything from community center to the waterfront and beyond. And we've taken a tour of where these initiatives lie, and I continue to seek more community engagement as we go through this process. I don't know if the village manager has more to add.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So I think it's important to understand, in setting a boundary, we're talking about a downtown revitalization initiative. So that seems intuitive that we would focus on downtown. We know that in Ossining, we have kind of a diffuse business district that extends all the way up Croton Avenue. So one could ask, is that not part of your business district or part of revitalization too? So I want to caveat that in putting forth the projects, it's really important that we put forth projects that we actually had site control over. The majority of village-owned properties are in this area, and that really dictated beyond just being about a Main Street downtown revitalization program. That does not mean, however, that these projects aren't intended to not only catalyze revitalization of our downtown, but as a revitalization of our entire community. So everything that we do was thought out very strategically, so that collectively the impact would reverberate throughout the whole community. And also with other work that we're doing that is not necessarily specifically related to our DRI application, but looking at narrowing Route 9 so that it goes back to 2 lanes instead of 4 lanes. Also hope, is done in the interest of creating greater connectivity, making for a more sustainable, more walkable community. So just again, how we establish the DRI area, I think is important for everybody here in the public to understand as well. We'll go into the projects in greater detail, but again, they are established in a strategic and thoughtful manner. They all work synergistically, and they all contribute to a more robust, a more dynamic, a more walkable, a more improved quality of life for our residents. And again, extending beyond just Main Street and downtown to potentially more activity on the waterfront itself. And obviously with understanding of the implications of Sing Sing Prison Museum. So I think we'll go into more detail about the projects, but just so that everybody had a good background on why this particular area, which extends from the community center down Main Street through the waterfront and then back up essentially the Sing Sing Kill to the recreation center, was chosen.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful. Yeah, I think that this DRI boundary will be shared with the members of the LPC, and it will also be posted to the Village of Ossining's website folks can share feedback. We do know that there have been instances where boundaries have shifted slightly, but we understand that in this instance there is a real interest in connecting the Main Street corridor and the public waterfront, and including projects that could have a catalytic effect for downtown revitalization. Okay, so moving to vision, goals, and strategies. This is important framing as we begin preparing deliverables and planning reports in connection to the Village of Ossining DRI. Our first task is to affirm the vision statement for downtown Ossining. The vision will offer a guiding framework for the DRI strategic investment plan. We will then identify a handful of goals that identify conceptual ideas, which would be addressed. And then we'll identify strategies that have specific outcomes that the DRI strategic investment plan should achieve. So I find it helpful to give an example, right? Because some of these terms are rather conceptual. And so, for example, if the vision is to create a more active downtown, one goal could be to make the downtown more walkable. And so a strategy to make the downtown more walkable could be improving safety for pedestrians. And a project that could flow from that vision, goal, and strategy formulation is an intersection redesign, which would improve safety for pedestrians, thereby making the downtown more walkable and supporting a more active downtown neighborhood. So that's the sort of framing that we're trying to establish here at the outset of the DRI. So when it comes time to evaluate projects, we can sort of look back to this framework and understand which projects are really actualizing the vision, goals, and strategies. So moving to the vision statement. This is taken from the DRI application that was submitted by the Village of Ossining. I know it's a bit long, but I think it's helpful to read aloud. And then we will ask the LPC members to click on a link that will be shared. And we will ask you to enter the words that come to mind when you envision the future of downtown Ossining. So try and think about the words that come to mind when you envision the future of downtown Ossining. Downtown Ossining is a community that will preserve its cultural and socioeconomic diversity while creating an even better tomorrow for the people who make up the community. Ossining's unique assets include a rich history and progressive social structure, abundant public amenities, engaged residents, a commitment to sustainable and inclusive development, an entrepreneurial and innovative business community, and a commitment to the arts. Ossining's vision is to build on our successes and strengthen our assets by creating a connected and walkable downtown waterfront district that reflects our community's diversity with an array of opportunities for locals and visitors alike. So that is the vision statement from the Village of Ossining's DRI application. I hope that you were sort of listening for words that came to mind when you're envisioning the future of Ossining. And we will now move to the activity portion of the meeting, and I'll turn it over to Alan to get that queued up.
Great, thank you, Catherine. So LPC members, in a moment, you're going to get a message with a link to, we've got a series of prompts for you, and we'll be sharing those results live on the screen. For the first one in particular, I just want you to keep in mind, if you have a multi-word answer, just separate the words with a hyphen or an underscore, just so it keeps it all together. You'll see the display of it on the screen in just a moment. So I'm going to be sending you a message in just a moment. And then I'll be flipping over to share my screen and we will begin to look at these together.
Thank you, Alan. I received the message.
Great. Okay. We'll give folks a moment to read it and share some thoughts.
If anyone has not received the message with the link to this activity, please let us know and we can try and get that over to you. Once you've entered your name, you should see the question, what words come to mind when you envision the future of downtown Ossining? You can enter as many words as you would like, and they're going to pop up here on the screen in real time. I love it.
And where I'm not seeing the message, I'm sorry. Where am I?
Oh, no problem. If you, I can email it to you, Mayor Levin.
I see the words coming up. I'm just not seeing the message.
If you go down to the bottom pane on your screen and you see the chat function.
Looking. Okay. Oh, got it.
Okay, once you click on that, then there's going to be the link in there from Alan that you could click on.
Thank you for that. I realized I would have to switch back to my screen to manage that. So
no problem.
And once you click on the link, where are you supposed to type your responses?
it should prompt you for a name to identify, and then I think you can hit enter, and then you should see this question that's at the top of the screen in a bit of a different format, but that's when you can type in your responses after you've entered your name to identify who you are.
And where was I supposed to enter my name?
It should be the very first prompt you get after you click on the link.
Kim, I'll go ahead and send the link to you once more, and we can see if when you click on it, you can enter your name. Okay, I've just sent it to you.
And as you could see here, we're getting some really good responses, diversity, development. And as you see here, the larger the word is, that means that those words have been put in by multiple people. So that means it seems that walkable, diverse, development, those are what maybe the LPC wants to focus on. Those are those larger words that come to mind, what we want to see for the future of the downtown. And you can put in more than one response, so feel free to keep adding. And just so you're aware, we will also be collecting all this, all your input, and we'll be taking this back to our team and reading through it and seeing what is standing out as we see here for our use for creating this vision, for drafting the vision, I should say.
Okay, Kim, I emailed you the link as well if you're having trouble getting it through the chat. All right. This looks great. I'm a big fan of these word clouds. We can see that folks are continuing to enter responses. We can see that diversity is important. I'm seeing historic, vibrant, beautiful, green, affordable, connected, bustling, accessible, no more vacant lots, integrated. Yep. We can keep this open for a little bit longer as folks continue to enter words. It's cool to see it grow.
And it's great to know that a lot of the LPC members are thinking alike.
Mm-hmm. All right, maybe we'll give folks another 10, 15 seconds to add some words here. And we can move on to the next prompt. Wow, this looks great. Okay, we are going to be able to download this word cloud and share it with the LPC following the meeting.
Great. Okay, Catherine, shall I move on to the next?
Yes, please.
Great. All right, so this next one and all the ones that follow, these are more open response. You don't have to worry about using hyphens or anything like that. So we're just going to see the responses as they roll on the screen. So in just a moment, in that same interface, you should now have a new prompt, which reads, how could we improve transportation and connectivity within downtown Ossining? So we'll give you all a few moments to respond to that.
And just so you're aware, now we're moving towards thinking about the goals. What do we want the goals to be that will then fulfill that vision for the downtown? So when thinking of that, in this case, we're talking about transportation and connectivity. However, there's going to be 4 other prompts that are going to have other themes that we would like to focus on as well that also came from that vision. So just something to think about for when responding.
Okay, we have a response about good signage to improve transportation and connectivity, a ferry for visitors, fewer cars, free electric shuttle, steps from waterfront to Main Street, move parking out of the heart of the area, a loop shuttle, consider and study roundabout at the intersection of Croton and Highland Avenue for safer crossing, shuttle trolley, walking is healthy, a way to deal with the grade differentials, increased parking, what to do about the hills, yep, carpooling parking areas, completion of Greenway, development of Main Street, and sector between downtown and the waterfront, bike lane, options for subsidized mass transit, a shuttle between major points, trolley connecting waterfront with Main and eventually Upper Croton Avenue, improving the Five Corners intersection. So yeah, we're seeing a range of responses. I'm seeing responses that connect to public transit, to shuttle usage, to ferry usage, bike lanes and Greenway, intersection improvements, a funicular, some differing ideas about parking, increased parking, perhaps carpooling parking area, reducing parking or moving it from the heart of the downtown.
It's also interesting to think that some of these responses already correlate to the vision, talking about mobility and how to make the downtown safer. So it's interesting to think that we're already thinking in that pathway that we should be.
Yeah. Okay, we'll give folks another 10 or 15 seconds to add ideas they may have related to transportation and connectivity. And then we'll move on to housing. Transportation from the riverfront to the Main Street shopping district. And I think attention to that grade differential is important as well. Okay, Alan, I think we can move on to the next one.
Okay, great. Next prompt coming up, same as this first one. Enter as many times as you like. Maybe keep complete thoughts, separate thoughts so they show up. But we'll keep this up here for a few minutes, just like the last one.
Yeah, and I was wrong. It's, I think, going to go transportation, economic development, housing, and then recreation, arts and culture.
You're keeping us on our toes.
It's a lot of ground to cover. How can we boost economic development and diversify employment opportunities? We have a thought about improving parking, creating business,
So good.
Increased mixed use development, cooperative makerspace, more affordable housing to attract people who would support the business community, storefronts in the areas that are now parking, local entrepreneurship, spaces for pop-up shops, work with women and minority-owned businesses, solve the litter problem to attract development, creative live workspace, innovative business spaces, daycare programs for young parents, places to live next to places to work, support co-working space, economic incentives and grants, more food retailers, producers, restaurants, breweries, gathering spaces, marketing, second story office space, more housing, an attractive green space downtown, developing the Main Street lots with residential business, tourism from NYC, all right, maybe we'll leave this one open for another, okay, hotels, another 10, 15 seconds so folks can enter ideas. Standardized local signage laws. Okay, encourage hospitality assets, cultural attractions, an incubator. They're still rolling. Okay, we'll give it a little longer. Create a small hotel, develop fairs and fun things for people to attend, exploit the attractiveness of the waterfront, attracting people from outside the village, improve Market Square. Okay, I think we've got to move on, but we will continue to solicit feedback from LPC members. We'll send these prompts around by email with the responses we've received, and folks can add to them.
Okay, ready for the next?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Same drill, you guys are pros by now. How could we enhance housing opportunities in downtown Ossining?
Some of these may become a bit repetitive. I know that we've had some conversation about housing as a part of economic development, for example. The responses we've received so far: create more mixed income housing, improve overnight parking, housing for first-time buyers at income levels for a true mix, streamline approvals, prepare the area for housing infrastructure, especially as a way to attract, maybe incentivize developers. Okay, we've had a bit of a pause in responses. We've had enhancing housing opportunities in downtown Ossining, allow greater density, host home ownership programs with local lenders, housing specific to artists and creatives. We had seen some under economic development about live workspace, for example. Develop better overnight parking regulations, housing equal to the economy of the low-end residents, multi-tier parking structure behind community center, 20% affordability set aside, specific to people who are downsizing, using tax credits for rehab of historic buildings, mixed use zoning. All right, we can give folks another 10 or 15 seconds to enter ideas. creative housing opportunity for homeowners, develop without displacing. Micro units. Okay. I think we can probably shift to what I think is our last poll, address zombie abandoned buildings.
There might be 2 left.
Okay.
All right, I'll shift to the next. Thank you all for these great responses so far. Next prompt should be loading up on your screen. How could we enhance public space, recreation, and arts and culture in downtown Ossining?
All right. Bunch of ideas. Murals, village green, street fairs, performance space, plant more trees. Create small seating areas, outdoor seating and lunch spots, festivals, all caps. Outdoor dining solutions. Work with the town to enhance our current parks. Study possibility for underground parking. Replace lots with village green. Enhance the community center for outdoor and indoor performance stage, ferry. Host races and events. Unite retail and restaurants for street fairs. Outdoor dining that is centralized on a main corridor. Utilize the greenways art space. Adaptable multi-use spaces. Utilize Metro North to market happenings. Improve farmers market. Make more events for attraction in order to have the connection between community and artist. More public art. Music venues on the riverfront during summertime. Outdoor seating for interaction. Perhaps a silver lining of COVID, promoting outdoor seating. Host public art contests. Performance arts at our parks. Update the current parks. The Riverview is the best anywhere. Live music, maybe live music. Consider shade trees and benches. All right, I think that we should move to the final poll, and then we can discuss the DRI application projects.
Okay, I'm going to
Better garbage management.
move on to the next one. I just want to make sure there's a little bit of a lull. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
All right, last prompt. Pretty open-ended. What other goals might you have for downtown Ossining?
So we talked about transportation and connectivity, about economic development and employment, housing, open space, arts and culture. We wanted to make room in case there were things were missing. Increasing tax base, attracting new residents. So it may be tougher. It's pretty broad. A vibrant small business community. More space for young people to gather. Attracting young residents. Create a space for environmental education. Add beauty. Celebrate our rich history and highlight our successes. Maintaining and enforcing clean streets. Be open to different points of view. Consolidate fire companies. Green space. Got a bunch of good ones coming in. Partner with Sing Sing Correctional Facility, a potential asset that is undervalued. Creating real integration in the business community. Fix and restore aging historic buildings. All right. Well, we are coming up on 1:30. And so, well, I would like to just continue to leave these open because it's so cool to see the responses in real time. I think we do need to shift to an overview of the DRI application projects, which I think will help address some of the vision and goals, feedback that we've already received. And then we're going to create some time to talk about public engagement, as well as a lot of time for public comment. So we're going to keep moving. Thank you so much, Alan, for facilitating that exercise. Okay, so we wanted to briefly share the DRI application projects that were identified. The projects themselves fall into 4 categories. The first of which is new development and rehabilitation of existing structures. It is important to note that the list of DRI application projects is a starting point. More projects may come through the process. We will talk about a call for projects that will soon be opened, as well as public engagement opportunities and ideas that the LPC may share. But in terms of new development or rehab of existing structures, the DRI application spoke to enhancements at 30 Water Street, a business incubator at 200 Main Street, improvements to the Joseph G. Caputo Community Center, repurposing historic Ossining firehouses, something that was just referenced, mixed-use development in Village Square for the Market Square Post Office lots, structured parking on the Brandreth lot, and kickstart funding for the Sing Sing Prison Museum. Those are the projects from the DRI application that fell within new development or rehabilitation of existing structures. Moving to the next slide. There were also a handful of public improvement projects identified. Village Pier expansion, streetscaping at Station Plaza, museum in the streets reboot, public broadband, and improved design for the 5-way intersection, which was also referenced during our polling just now. Moving on to the final 2 categories. Within the grant fund or revolving loan fund category, there was a project proposed for facade improvements along Main and Spring Streets. And under branding and marketing, a project was proposed for wayfinding signage for downtown parking and amenities. So these are the projects that were included in the DRI application. We will have opportunities in the first public meeting to share more information about these projects, solicit some feedback, and then in LPC meeting 2, we're going to begin to dig a bit deeper. I will pause here if there are questions from folks about the DRI application from the Village of Ossining, and then we will discuss public engagement before allowing for public comment. Any questions from folks on the DRI application material that included the boundary, the vision, potential goals, and identified projects?
There is a comment in the chat feature, and it says, someone mentioned partnering with Sing Sing. We should also explore partnering with many churches in the downtown area, which may be struggling financially, but have land and buildings that might be able to be repurposed or shared.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine, I just also want to ask, I just want to make sure that everybody on the LPC has actually had the opportunity to read the application, there's a written application as well as via the video. We're assuming that you probably did, but if you didn't, we can provide that information to you. It just gives a little bit more clarity to some of the things that were just presented in context.
Yes, yes, and it's so much information to cover. It is hard to get into, you know, a lot of depth in this initial meeting, but we did share the DRI application as well as the DRI guidebook by email. And so you can also find it on the Village of Ossining's website. We too encourage folks to read that, as it provides a lot of really good context. Okay, so in the interest of time, we will move ahead toward public engagement. So we have brought on Carp Strategies to help develop a public engagement plan that will inform and educate community members about the DRI planning process, solicit and receive input, and build support for plan implementation. We understand that there has been extensive public engagement in the Village of Ossining, and we want to build on those efforts, not retread the same ground. LPC members play a vital role in this process by helping to identify key stakeholders who should be involved and suggest how best to involve them. I will now turn it over to Yuri from Carp Strategies to provide an overview of the LPC meetings, the public meetings, and other outreach strategies that compose the public engagement plan. Thanks.
Great, good. Thanks, Catherine. If you can go to the next slide, please. Again, thank you for your participation in the DRI process. To give you a quick timeline, there are 6 meetings for the LPC in total, all of which are open to the public, but they are working meetings mainly for the LPC. Each meeting will be building upon the one that comes before it. So today's meeting is to provide an overview of the DRI process and to go over the public engagement plan. The next meeting will be to review feedback received from the community on public meeting 1 and to begin putting together a downtown profile and looking over project selection criteria. Then in April, there will be preparation that we'll be doing together for public meeting 2, as well as reviewing a preliminary project list for applications for the DRI funding. And then the remaining 3 meetings, so there's one for each month until June. Again, continuing to build upon feedback that we've received from the community and refining the list of project applications that have been received. And then again for 5, preparing for the final public meeting, then putting together that downtown management and implementation strategy, and ultimately finishing up in June to review all the feedback from the public meetings and to ensure that feedback has been integrated into the downtown strategic investment plan. And this is when the vote will be done for the final project list. And voting for the final projects should be, because this has been an iterative process, the voting process should be pretty streamlined as well. So in addition to the LPC meetings, which again, there's 1 per month, 6 in total, there are 3 larger public meetings, and this is meant to be more for the entire community to be able to participate in an interactive way. So the first meeting will be occurring in early March and will be held virtually. So we are putting together a virtual meeting room where people will be able to navigate this room, learn about the DRI, learn about Ossining's draft vision, goals, and draft vision and goals for the DRI, provide feedback, and then also learn about some of the project applications thus far. And this is also, there will be feedback surveys integrated throughout the virtual meeting room where folks will be able to provide input on how they would like the DRI to look in Ossining. And then there will be an additional community meeting in April that will be refining that project selection, that project list and selection criteria. And then the final community meeting in June that will be a more refined project list. And so this is where we would love to get some feedback from you, the LPC, about some of our proposed outreach strategies. We know that Ossining really values inclusive community engagement and wants to be very intentional about how the DRI process is run. So here are some of the proposed outreach strategies. Please let us know if we're missing anything. So in addition to posting on the DRI webpage, on Ossining's webpage, as well as the social media pages, there will also be email blasts through the village, including the weekly letter from the mayor. We would love to enlist LPC members and other key stakeholders that have been identified to promote the public meetings as widely as possible. And we also have targeted outreach to organizations serving the village's Latinx and African American communities, as well as enlisting the Youth Bureau. We would also like to conduct door-to-door outreach to businesses in downtown Ossining and doing multilingual flyering and posters in English and Spanish, as well as press releases to local media outlets, including Spanish language outlets. So I will pause here, or I do think we have some discussion questions about this, but I wanted to pause here. Yeah, so I guess in terms of discussion, we wanted to ask the LPC how we can encourage broad participation. Looking at that list of outreach strategies, were there any that were missed or that can be expanded upon?
All right, looks like Brent has raised their hand. Brent, if you want to share your comment.
Yes, thank you. This is great. And I was thinking as I'm reading this that are you planning any tours of some of the projects? I know we conduct tours at the Sing Sing Prison Museum along the waterfront. It does not involve going into the facility, but I think to make it more publicly accessible and understandable what we're doing, we would be happy to offer within the time frame that you have available tours to people who would be interested in knowing more about the project. And maybe there are some others that are listed in the village plan that would also, since so much of this occurs outdoors and is involved in structural investments.
Yeah, thank you for that idea. That we had not yet talked about incorporating tours into the public outreach strategy, but it's something that we could talk about together. I see that Seth raised a hand as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, this is a conversation, we've been talking a lot on the planning board recently about public outreach. It usually comes to us after the fact when we're reviewing projects. And so when we're talking about, physical interventions in this downtown area, not just the, making sure that it's not just the businesses that are involved, but the people who, there are a lot of people who live in the village and in these areas, and that we don't always, it's just not always apparent when these projects are being started, how they'll impact people. And I want to, at this point in the stage, and I don't have an answer of how, but making sure that that's a real priority, that not just the businesses, but the people who live there are involved and aware and know what's going on.
Got it. Thank you. Point taken.
And I think that one of the questions we have is where, and this is something that we've already discussed during our site visit and with the mayor as well as with the town manager, but we were curious where Ossining has seen success in conducting outreach and getting participation in these types of initiatives for the populations that typically are not as engaged.
I think involving the library would be good. A lot of people go to the library. They use it for all sorts of things. A lot of is bilingual, and it really is an information source for a lot of people.
Great.
Yeah, that is great.
I'm also going to, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Marlene.
I'm also going to say that we should include all of the churches in the area. They're very, there's minority churches, but there's also Hispanic-based churches. And it's almost like you have people that are together that we can actually bring in with little effort on our part.
I'm going to echo Marlene's statement and add that similar to a library, maybe we set up a little space for information in the community center, especially since that is also well used, but is also part of the initiatives here. And so that might also reach a different group of folks as well.
Great. Yes, and I know that we have a list of key stakeholders and an extension of the LPC, and so it could be useful to for us all to review that list to ensure that we have all of those churches and public library point of contacts.
That's great. I feel badly potentially cutting this conversation short because it's an important one, but I also want to allow for public comment. And I see that there are some members of the public who are on the line. So our next step here will be to solicit feedback from the LPC by email if there were ideas that folks didn't get to share, given that we're a bit pressed for time. And then we will revise a draft plan that we will circulate to the LPC for review. Awesome. Thank you, Yuri. And then I think our last, our last slide is about the call for projects. Christy, do you want to take this one? There we are. Okay. So for the call for projects, as we've mentioned throughout this presentation so far, the projects identified within the village's DRI application will comprise the initial slate of projects to be considered, along with others collected throughout the DRI planning process. The call for projects is an opportunity for stakeholders and community members to submit additional projects that may be considered by the LPC for inclusion in the DRI strategic investment plan. It includes project sponsor information, DRI funding request, description of the current conditions at the project location, description of the proposed project itself, including the status and the plan for implementation, and description of those project benefits. And with that, we plan on issuing the call for projects Tuesday, February 22nd, and for it to close on Monday, March 21st. We will be having an online submission that will be linked from the Village of Ossining's DRI webpage. And in addition to that, we will also be sending that along to the LPC members so that we could rely on you to also spread the word and present that to the public as well. And I know that was very quick that I went through, but we do have time quickly here to talk about that call for projects or any of the public engagement that we also just talked through briefly, and then we can continue on with the next steps. If anyone has any questions.
I don't see any LPC hand members raised. I mean, any LPC members hands raised, excuse me.
Okay, great. So we'll go to next steps and then we'll open up public comment. So first of all, thank you so much to everyone who has been a part of this meeting. I know that we shared a lot of information. We will recirculate the DRI application and guidebook by email, as well as the meeting recording and the PowerPoint. In terms of important upcoming dates, just putting these on your radar. As Christy said, the call for projects will open on Tuesday. It will be open during the first public meeting, and then we will be able to review responses at the second and third LPC meeting. Public meeting 1 will take place virtually. It's scheduled for Thursday, March 8th. We will have information for you to share with your networks. And please look out for a doodle poll to schedule all remaining LPC meetings. We'd like to get those on the books well in advance, and we would like to vary the meeting times. We understand that meeting during the day is not convenient for some or possible, and so we want to be able to vary those meeting times to accommodate as many LPC members as possible. Okay, so here you've got the Ossining DRI email address, ossiningdri@vhb.com. If you have code of conduct submissions, please send those to Susan at the Department of State. And please check out the Village of Ossining website, which was just launched. Okay, with that, we've got about 10 minutes. Alan, I will ask you to bring up the slide.
Catherine,
yes.
Just one quick question. I wanted to just say that Elizabeth Martinez did join, so I just want to acknowledge. Okay.
Hi, thank you so much. Hi, Elizabeth, thank you for joining us. We had done LPC introductions earlier, and so if you would like to just take a moment and introduce yourself, that would be great. Apologies for putting you on the spot. I see Elizabeth is there, but still muted.
Okay, got it?
Yes.
Okay, yes, I want to say hi to everybody, and I want to say thank you for inviting me to the meeting. So I'm happy to be here, and I hear all the information you guys have for the community. So it's good, and I'm happy to hear that. And thank you for letting me stay here with you guys.
Elizabeth, could you just say what you're representing down on Main Street? You have 2 businesses there, so just want to make sure everybody knows.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we have Karma Lounge. This is in Main Street, 175 Main Street, Ossining. And we have 31 Street. This is Karma Market. That is downtown. So it's a market. The name is the same, Karma Market. That is in 31 Spring Street in Ossining. So welcome everybody, you want to go there. So we're happy to be there, working a little hard.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. Really nice to meet you. And thank you,
Nice to
Karen,
meet
for
you.
flagging that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So I know the next meeting is in March, right? March 8th.
That'll be the next public meeting. Yes.
Yes,
And then the
thanks.
LPC will meet after that.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So now we'll shift to public comment.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sure. So as you can see in the screen here, a couple ways to let us know you'd like to speak, ask, or comment. Use the Q&A button down below, or use the raise hand, or if you're on the telephone, which we don't have anyone, but for future reference, it's *9. I do see one hand raised, and so for right now, I'm going to call on Mark Fry. So Mark, you should now have an option to unmute your line, and if you do, the floor is yours.
Very good. My name is Mark Fry. I'm a recent, live here in Ossining at the Squire House, an historic property. I'm a land use planner, and I'm proud that we turned Lincoln School as an adaptive reuse into 13 condominiums back in 2007. So that I worked very hard on the village of Terrytown downtown revitalization. People say, gee, you did a great job. How'd you do it? And the answer is pretty simple. 20 years of very hard work. But we got there, and we built upon our historic assets. We were some people were going to knock down the Terrytown Music Hall built in 1885, and it has since become a linchpin and a real attraction to draw people into downtown Tarrytown. That in turn has supported all of the restaurants. I very much, you have the Smith's Opera House. The building at the corner of Brandreth, I think I got the name wrong. But one of the things that really worked for us was an emphasis on the amazing history of the village of Tarrytown, and Ossining is equally impressive. I'm so very happy to see, the great work that Dana, first of all, let me say, what a great team you have. I've got the list of the local planning committee members, and I think you've got an absolutely stunning team of local participants. And as a land use planner myself, I've got to congratulate Catherine and Zanell, the team at VHB, and all of the participants. You've done a wonderful, wonderful job. Thank you to Mayor Erika Boch for reaching out to the public to participate. I'm very happy to see that we had our village historian in Tarrytown involved. I'm so happy to see that Joyce Kroll is involved. And I've been learning a lot about local Black history. I learned something about it. And now I'm involved with a project or in a Black neighborhood down on Water Street. And I'm finding out, the buildings were built in 1858. It's been a Black community since 1921. But it's been a community, having done a lot of community civic activism, it's very hard to reach. So I congratulate Yuri Chang and her team for suggesting the best way to reach those communities is probably with flyers and hang tags and so forth. Certainly all of the great suggestions through the churches. I was astounded to see in the census that 90% of Ossining residents have computers and 80% have access to the internet. And some of us just automatically think that that's a great way to reach people, and the village has done a wonderful job doing that. But in this project, as Mr. Roy said, as chairman of the planning board, normally people don't have a good way of learning what is planned for their neighborhood. The information's there. If you go to it, you can click and find out what's planned. But I think a proactive way of distributing that information using all of the different methods you've already talked about at the community center, at the library, but especially old-fashioned flyers. That's what worked for us in Tarrytown. It worked for us in Sleepy Hollow, and it allowed us to reach people who had no idea what was going on. So let me say I've been through this charrette process a couple of times. You're doing a spectacular job, but there tends to be one group that's well-connected that participates, and another group that has absolutely no idea that anything is going on. And I think that's the challenge. Again, building on the history. When I presented the Lincoln School project, I dug deep, found out that it was the first school in America named after the late great President Lincoln. Why? Because the local Grand Army of the Republic wanted a school in every community in America named after Lincoln. A lot of people don't know Lincoln came to Ossining twice. And there's a phenomenal photo, thanks to Joyce Cole and the Westchester Historical Society, of the ark that was amazing to greet the funeral train when he rolled through here. So building on the proud history of Ossining, the Black history, the white history, the Dutch history starting in 1609, all of that, those were the things that brought people to downtown Tarrytown, and those are the people that will bring people to downtown Ossining. And I think you've got a great team. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much to everyone. Super job.
Thank you so much, Mark. We really appreciate your taking part in the meeting and sharing your experience. Looking forward to working with you in this process.
Excellent. Scanning the list, I don't see Any more hands raised at the moment? I don't see anything in the Q&A. Maybe one last call. As Catherine and team have pointed out before, lots of ample opportunities to comment other ways and in future meetings. So if you're not ready to today, certainly we'll be willing to accept and hear that commentary later. All right, so with that, Catherine, I think I'll put myself back on mute and transition the rest of the meeting back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again to everyone for being a part of today's meeting. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us here today to learn about the DRI program, and we look forward to working with you in this process.
Thank you.
And just before we jump off, just to let everyone know again, we'll be having the public meeting #1 in early March. And we do want to let you know that it will be a virtual setting. And we will also be having live Spanish translation at that meeting as well.
Yep, and translated materials. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Have a good
everyone for your
afternoon.
time.
Thank you.